Yu-Gi-Oh! You've probably heard of it. The card game is still played today by millions of fans all over the world. Chances are you watched the hack job of a dub that 4Kids produced in the early 2000s. This is not what we're covering this time. No, we're actually covering the original manga created by Kazuki Takahashi. The series got two anime adaptations. Yu-Gi-Oh! By Toei Animation, which loosely adapted the first 7 volumes of the manga, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, which is the more famous show of the two. But for the real, authentic Yu-Gi-Oh! Story, you gotta read the manga. Rather than create a typical fighting shonen manga, Takahashi decided to be a little more creative. An avid gamer, the gimmick of this manga was that they would play games. Yu-Gi-Oh! Stands for King of Games, after all. We open with a glyph which tells us of the Shadow Games. After that, we open with modern-day Japan, well, 1996, I guess. A boy named Yugi Moto is sitting at his desk after school working on something called the Millennium Puzzle, a gift from his grandfather. Yugi has been working on the puzzle for 8 years, but while he's working on it, Yugi is bullied by Jinochi and Honda, or Joey and Tristan if you're familiar with the English dub. Just so you know, I'll be sticking with the Japanese names for the most part. Jinochi wants to teach Yugi how to be a man, but Yugi doesn't like violence. Fortunately, his childhood friend Anzu comes to Yugi's aid. Taya in the English dub. One thing that's a little odd about the art, it looks like Yugi has no nose at this point. Also, Yugi is a bit of a pervert right now, which is at odds with his later characterization where he's basically a pure soul. Yugi claims solving the puzzle will grant any wish, just like the Dragon Balls. Cute. Jinochi and Honda are beaten up by this jerk named Ushio, who apparently reappears in Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, or so I've heard. Jinochi throws one of Yugi's puzzle pieces into the water to be a jerk, I guess. Yugi continues to work on the puzzle, a memento of his grandfather, who is still alive and is the typical dirty old man that Japan loves so much. I know America looks down on this kind of character like him, Roshi and Jiraiya, much more these days, but in Japan, it's just viewed differently. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, it's just how it is. The next day, Yugi returns to school and finds Ushio has beaten up Jinochi and Honda for protection, and wants Yugi to pay money that he obviously doesn't have, so he gets some fists in return. Yugi's biggest wish is for friends that he can count on, and Jinochi is touched by Yugi standing up for him, so he returns the missing puzzle piece to him. With that, Yugi completes the puzzle and a dark transformation occurs within the boy. That night, Ushio arrives to a challenge and meets Yugi, but there's something a little different about him. He looks much more menacing, confident, and a little evil, yeah. This is Dark Yugi, Yugi's other self. I will never call him just Yami. Dark Yugi challenges Ushio to a game. They take dollar bills and stab a knife into him without stabbing their hand. Whatever they get to keep. Eventually, Ushio can't do it anymore without stabbing himself, so he tries to stab Dark Yugi, who in turn subjects Ushio to a penalty game where, well, that's oddly appropriate, I would say. But regardless, Yugi and Jinochi are now friends. The first couple of stories for Yu-Gi-Oh! Are largely standalone. Typically involves Yugi hanging out with his friends when some jerk tries to ruin their day. Dark Yugi would emerge, challenge said dickhead to a shadow game, and give them their just desserts. Perhaps most famously of all, Dark Yugi challenges a convict to a game where they can only use one finger. And Dark Yugi is able to win by putting a lighter on his hand, while the convict is in the process of pouring Russian vodka. So if the convict shoots his gun, the lighter will fall, and he will be set on fire. Surely he's just bluffing, right? Oh my. Most notably, there was a game called Duel Monsters, or Magic and Wizards as it was known in the original manga at the time. A card game that involves summoning monsters and spells to make them more powerful. Yugi's grandfather has the rare Blue Eyes White Dragon, but then Seto Kaiba enters, and he dismisses Jinochi's attempt to become friends by saying, "Come back when you've collected 10,000 cards." Apparently Kaiba is based on someone who actually said that to Takahashi, or was it one of his friends? Kaiba does take interest in the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but Shigorku refuses to sell it to him. Kaiba doesn't take no for an answer and promptly steals the card. But Dark Yugi emerges and challenges Kaiba to a children's card game. Using his shadow powers, the monsters come alive. Kaiba seems to win because he draws blue eyes, but it won't summon for him. Because his heart's not in that card or something? Yay, heart of the cards! Dark Yugi punishes Kaiba by making him experience death, but it's only an illusion and he hopes he will learn the value of the cards. Well, that was pretty harsh, but I'm sure Kaiba in that silly card game will never appear again. We get some more history on the characters. We see Jinochi was part of a gang, and Dark Yugi gets back at them by electrocuting them. Wow. I wonder how 4Kids would have censored that. In Chapter 13, we start the Man from Egypt story, which introduces us to Shadi. Shadi's goal is to punish those who defile Egypt, but takes interest in that the Millennium puzzle was solved. Looking into Yugi's mind, he finds two minds, thus setting the stage for some revelations about Dark Yugi. When next they meet, Shadi challenges Dark Yugi to his game, and we see him put to the test for the first time, after he had dominated most previous games with ease. But Dark Yugi perseveres and wins because he has faith in his friends. That'll come up a lot, won't it? Before he leaves, Shadi critically mentions that Yugi may be able to open that door. Interesting. After a few filler stories that deal with virtual pets, which was all the rage at the time, if I remember correctly, we get introduced to Mokuba Kaiba, Seto's younger brother. Mokuba is quite different at this point if all you remember is the Duel Monsters anime. We get introduced to a game called Capsule Monsters, which is basically chess, but with monsters. Dark Yugi defeats Mokuba. It really just serves the purpose of setting the stage for Kaiba's return, as Mokuba hints at Def T. A story arc starts forming here, as Mokuba challenges Yugi and Jinochi to a game of Russian roulette, but with poisoned food. Mokuba tries to cheat, but Dark Yugi takes a rather inventive approach to stop him. You gotta admit, that's creative. Yeah, Mokuba's a real little brat at this point. Dark Yugi even has edge to him. Dark Yugi dramatically eating spaghetti. It's just an example of how everybody treats games as serious business in this series. But with that, our first major story arc begins with Def T. You see, Kaiba proved unexpectedly popular with readers, and for that reason, Takahashi brought him back. That is how it works in shonen. Kaiba takes Yugi and Jinochi to Kaiba, where a random guy reveals that Kaiba pretty much stole the company from his own stepfather, who committed suicide shortly thereafter. Yes, I know, Kaiba's stepfather becomes a major villain in an anime filler arc. Here's something you may remember from the first episode of the Duel Monsters anime. Kaiba duels Yugi's grandfather into submission, and then subjects him to the death experience, which is why he's in bad shape.
For some reason, playing a card game has caused me to become severely injured.
Actually, here we get an explanation for why Kaiba developed the hologram technology for Duel Monsters. His shadow game with Yugi inspired him to enrich that experience, all part of an elaborate payback. Kaiba's really petty as he takes the time to rip up the 4th Blue Eyes White Dragon card so it can't be used against him. Kaiba agrees to let Yugi's grandfather go, so long as he agrees to Def T. Yugi receives his grandfather's deck, promising to use it to defeat Kaiba. As Yugi and Jinochi head into Def T, they are met by Honda and Anzu, who happen to just be there. Oh, and Honda's nephew, who is a little pervert, and I instantly hate him, and fortunately I'm not the only one. Readers really hated him, and Takahashi got the message and wrote him out near the end of the story arc. Our first game is Laser Tag, but Honda realizes that their guns are useless while the mercenaries' guns are real. This does give Honda his finest moment, and his little brat nephew does prove useful here. Horror Zone, which is a spooky ride. I won't show how they get out of it because I'm disgusted by it. Next, Kaiba traps them in a hand guillotine. Jeez, that's violent. Fortunately, Yugi's quick thinking gets them out before they lose any of their limbs. From there, they end up in a mirror room, and here's where the characters have a chance to talk, and they all talk about how they've changed since they've met Yugi. Anzu marks their hands with a sign, so that even after they all go their separate ways after high school, they will still be friends. Of course, it's then broken up by falling blocks. Anzu is able to show off her dancing skills by directing them out, but unfortunately Honda is unable to get out. Just take off your jacket, man. Then again, he at the moment probably not thinking straight. We get some insight into Kaiba and Moko's relationship. It's quite different from how you might remember it. Yeah. Yugi finally decides to tell Anzu and Jinochi of his other self that emerges when he plays a game. He feared that they would not be his friends anymore, but they tell him that he is still Yugi, and that's all that matters. As they approach the 4th stage, Yugi turns into Dark Yugi in front of Anzu and Jinochi for the first time. Dark Yugi is able to defeat Mokuba again by outsmarting him. Kaiba shows a real ruthless side as he tries to subject Mokuba to the death experience. But Dark Yugi shows a more compassionate side as he rescues Mokuba from this grisly fate. Mokuba reflects that Kaiba certainly changed from when they were kids. Oh gee, you don't think, kid. Dark Yugi and Kaiba duel once again in Duel Monsters. Yugi can put up a fight, but Kaiba quickly turns the tables with his 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons. It seems all Yugi can do is wait for the inevitable, but he has one monster that guarantees victory no matter what. The unstoppable Exodia. With everything on the line, Yugi is able to draw the final Exodia card and obliterates Kaiba's Blue Eyes. Dark Yugi suggests Kaiba to another penalty game. This time he destroys the evil in his heart. Mokuba was able to get Honda out as repayment to Yugi. He relays his backstory. You see, in the anime, Kaiba defeated Gozaburo at chess legitimately, but here, he wins by cheating. Yugi promises Mokuba that when Kaiba is finished reassembling his heart, he will return. And from there, Def T comes to an end. The stakes were high and the characters started to form the friendship path that would last throughout the series. From there we go back to more standalone stories, a short story that further develops the love triangle between Anzu and the two Yugis, Jinochi going on a gaming show, winning $1,000,000 and then immediately losing it because, well, that would solve all his problems. Most of these stories just serve to further develop the characters, but we then meet Bakura, or is it Bakura? I've heard it pronounced differently in the Japanese version, who, like Yugi, also possesses a Millennium item, the Millennium Ring. Bakura is an outcast, as everyone who he plays games with ends up in a coma. We soon learn that, like Yugi, Bakura has another self inside the Millennium item, Dark Bakura, who at this point is just stealing people's souls inside miniatures from Monster World. He is able to trap Yugi and his friends in miniatures, but thanks to Yugi's other self emerging, they are given a chance to win. In fact, Yugi allows it to happen because he knows his other self will awaken. This is notable because this is the first time the two Yugis see each other. Also, the big bad of Monster World is Zork. Zork, eh? The real Bakura is able to fight from within, helping Yugi and his friends survive. You may remember that the anime loosely adapted this, but it works a lot better here. Sacrifices are made, but through the power of friendship and all that, everyone turns out okay, everybody returns to their bodies, and I'm sure Zork and the other Bakura will never appear again. The first 59 chapters of Yu-Gi-Oh! Definitely feels like it's trying to find its footing. The gimmick of the manga is somebody wrongs Yugi and his friends, Dark Yugi emerges, challenges said dickhead to a shadow game, and gives them their just desserts, as I said. Each game was different, but there was one game that caught readers' attentions. It was that little card game. People wrote to Takahashi. They were entranced by it. They wanted to know more about it. They wanted to see more of it, and from what I understand, Takahashi's bosses saw a lot of merchandise potential. Our main character, or is it characters, the two Yugis are essentially very different. Yugi is timid and cowardly at first and a bit perverted, but he does have a good heart. And when he stands up for Jinochi and Honda, that's when his other self appears. Dark Yugi is essentially invincible. It's not a matter of if he'll win, it's how he'll win. Dark Yugi is, by contrast, headstrong and confident. But as to who or what Dark Yugi is, that's shrouded in mystery at this point. At first you may think he's just a split personality, but as time goes on it becomes clear that he is another spirit that's come to inhabit Yugi's body. He starts off appearing much more menacing and sinister, but as time goes on he becomes more heroic, as shown when he saves Mokuba from Kaiba's penalty game. Jinochi perhaps gets the most character development. Starting out as a bully to Yugi, he claims to be trying to teach Yugi how to be a man, but when Yugi shows him what it means to truly be a friend, he changes and starts becoming a true friend to Yugi. We see bits of his life outside school and it's not pretty, particularly this panel which shows his alcoholic father. Only makes one appearance, but he sure makes an impression, doesn't he? Kazuki Takahashi named Yugi and Jinochi appropriately, as it means friendship. Anzu is much feistier than you may remember from the anime. Her main role is essentially getting into a love triangle with the two Yugis. Yugi is interested in her, but she likes Dark Yugi. It's a classic Superman Clark Kent situation with Lois Lane. Sometimes this goes against her better judgment, such as when she puts herself in danger just so Dark Yugi can appear. Honda doesn't really get much, after failing to impress Miho, who the Toei anime made a part of the main cast for some reason, but Yugi was able to win his friendship regardless. It often feels like Takahashi doesn't know what to do with Honda. Def T is probably the most useful he ever is in the series. When the manga began becoming mostly about card games, there wasn't a whole lot for him to do aside from occasionally punching somebody. Kaiba proved to be a surprisingly popular antagonist. He was pretty much just the antagonist of the week, and he's far more evil than you may remember. The methods he resorts to are pretty bad, even subjecting his own little brother Mokuba to the death experience. Not exactly the caring big brother you remember, huh? Although he does become that later. Kaiba's supposed to be a one-shot, but he ended up becoming the rival of the series due to fan interest. While there are some warts in trying to find its voice, Yu-Gi-Oh! Succeeded in making the main force friendship feel genuine. You totally buy that they are true companions who will do anything for each other. The games were unique and varied, but it's obvious that coming up with a new game was getting harder. So, for better or for worse, Yu-Gi-Oh! Started focusing more on the card game. Join me next time for Yu-Gi-Oh! When we will be covering the Duelist Kingdom arc. In the early 2000s, I don't think you can really underestimate just how big Yu-Gi-Oh! Was. It arguably rivaled Pokemon in terms of popularity. And as it was airing on Kids WB at the time, it was arguably their flagship show. Of course, the subsequent anime boom did cause Kids WB to kill their own American-made cartoons because they figured, why make our own cartoons when we can import them from Japan for cheap? but that's another story. To this day, there's countless sequel series, GX, 5D, Zexal, and Reigns, which I have not fully seen. I don't think I will be covering those series anytime soon, but we're still focusing on the original manga. From here on out, we are focusing much more on the card game, as that was what got the reader's interest. I suppose a big part of it had to do with Takahashi's incredible designs for some of the monsters. Dark Magician, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Exodia, they all look cool to this day. So with the interest still rising, Takahashi decided to have an entire arc be dedicated to duel monsters. The card game pretty much becomes the sole interest in this entire universe. Takahashi didn't mind, as he admitted coming up with a new game every week was getting more challenging. Now bear in mind the card game wasn't actually out yet. I can't find what year Duelist Kingdom was published, but I assume it was around 1998 or 1999. Meaning the rules of how the game is played here may differ from how you know it in real life, and we'll probably cover a little bit of that. With that said, let's get the show on the road. Welcome to Duelist Kingdom. We open with Yugi and his friends playing duel monsters in school. Jinochi is so poor at dueling that he can't even beat Anzu. And if you play Duel Links on mobile, you'd probably have an idea for how bad Anzu's cards really are. Yugi points out to Jinochi that his entire deck is just monster cards, and without spell and trap cards there's no way he will win. Yugi asks his grandfather to train Jinochi. Shigorku agrees, but tells Yugi a package came for him. As they prepare to watch the tournament finals, Yugi says he only wants to duel Kaiba, who is still in a coma. But we also set up that Jinochi will not forgive Kaiba, and this becomes a key part of their animosity. From there we turn our attention to the finals. It's between Insector Haga and Dinosaur Ryuzaki, Weevil Underwood and Rex Raptor in English. Both use specifically themed decks, Insects for Haga, Dinosaurs for Ryuzaki. Much to the surprise of Jinochi, Haga defeats Ryuzaki and is presented with a trophy by the creator of Duel Monsters, Maximilian Pegasus. Rare case for the Viz manga used the English name instead of his Japanese name, Pegasus Bader. I actually do think in this case the English name is an improvement. Who gives their kid the first name Pegasus? Pegasus tells Haga of a new tournament he has in store. Yugi decides to open the box where he finds a glove and tape. Turning the tape on, Pegasus greets Yugi. I'll clarify this if you don't know. Pegasus is explicitly stated to be American in the Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is why sometimes he will say phrases in plain English. Now this doesn't translate too well to actual English, but I was pleased they kept in Pegasus referring to Yugi and Kaiba as Yugi Boy and Kaiba Boy respectively. Pegasus challenges Yugi to a game who accepts, but Pegasus knows every move Yugi makes somehow and it turns into a shadow game. Dark Yugi promptly takes over, and we see Pegasus has something else where his left eye should be. The duel goes on. Pegasus knows Dark Yugi's every move. Nothing Yugi does can counter Pegasus. Pegasus' real goal is he wants Yugi to compete in Duelist Kingdom, and if he loses, well, he has to. Dark Yugi refuses to give up, even thinking Pegasus put subliminal messages into the video. Not sure how that could conceivably work, but, well, I guess it's a good try. But that's not what it is. Pegasus has been scanning Yugi's mind with his Millennium Eye the entire time, so he knows every move he'll make. The timer runs out before Yugi can make his comeback, and as a penalty game, Pegasus seals Yugi's grandfather's soul inside the videotape. The anime changes to sealing his soul inside a card, so now if Yugi wants to free his grandfather, he must go to Duelist Kingdom. The next day, Yugi meets with his friends. One key difference here from the anime is that Yugi is starting to understand how his other self feels. They haven't been able to make contact yet, but they're making steps to get there. Bakura still has the Millennium Ring. This is going to come back to bite them, isn't it? Dark Yugi stands alone on a rooftop. This is the first time he's ever lost a game, so he's feeling vulnerable. But regardless, he won't let this defeat define him. He will recover his grandfather's soul. Yugi receives the Duelist Kingdom invitation and where to go, while Jinochi receives a videotape of his own. It's not from Pegasus, but from his younger sister Shizuka. Serenity, in English. Still waiting for her to be put in Duel Links Kunami, who, when their parents got divorced, she went to live with their mother, while Jinochi was stuck with their father. As it turns out, she's going blind, unless she gets a very advanced and expensive surgery. Jinochi hasn't seen her for nearly 6 years, but despite this, he still feels dedicated to protecting her. Dark Yugi gives Jinochi a star chip as they both have something to compete for. Yugi for his grandfather, Jinochi for his sister. Yugi and his friends arrive at Domino Pier to board the ship for Duelist Kingdom. Haga and Ryuzaki are there, as well as this duelist named Mai, who charms the boys, but Anzu immediately takes a disliking to her. Catfighting coming. Mai shows some rather shady tactics as she tricks Ryuzaki into giving up his luxury room to her. Haga appears to be a rather decent guy until Yugi lets him see his Exodia cards, which Haga then throws off the ship. There's only one clip that's appropriate with this. Now, the reason for this is because obviously there would be no tension in any of the duels if Yugi always had Exodia to rely on to automatically win. He'll have to earn his victories the old-fashioned way from now on. All Haga does with this is ensure Yugi's wrapped, as he will go after him first. The next morning they arrive where Duelist Kingdom will take place. Duelist Kingdom is using its own custom rules, which, like I said, there were no actual rules for the game in real life at the time. Each duel starts with 2,000 life points. You can't direct attack your opponent. To enter the finals, you must achieve 10 star chips, which means Yugi and Jinochi are doing it at a disadvantage, as they only have 1 star chip each. In 48 hours, the tournament will be over. If you lose all your star chips, you are eliminated. Dark Yugi challenges Haga first. A little difference from the anime is that they duel in battle boxes rather than duel rings. Yugi makes up for the difference for only 1 star chip to wager by betting his life as well. Duelist Kingdom will have field advantages for the monsters. In the real-life game, this would be a field spell. I do love early duel monsters when you can just summon any level monster by normal summoning. We do get to see some of Yugi's traditional combos. Dark Magician with Mirror Force. Mirror Force is still a good card today. Through methods that would not work in the actual game and really awesome art, Yugi defeats Haga and now has 3 star chips, and Jinochi gets the Dueling Glove. Yay! Next up is Jinochi vs. Mai. Mai is pretty well above Jinochi as a duelist, but Jinochi doesn't back down because he doesn't want to be a coward. Mai's reason for competing in the tournament is pretty shallow. She just wants to be rich. At first it looks bad for Jinochi as Mai knows her cards without even looking at them, but through Yugi's advice, Jinochi is able to figure out that her cards are covered in perfume, which is how she can see them. Jinochi is able to defeat Mai because, unlike her, he has something worth fighting for: his sister and a little bit of luck. 4 hours have passed in Duelist Kingdom. Yugi has 3 star chips, Jinochi has 2. The next duel has Yugi face Ryoko Kajuki. How do you say that? Mako Tsunami in English, who uses a water fiendette and is really in touch with the ocean, perhaps a bit too much so. Ryoko puts up a fight, but Yugi is able to win by destroying the moon. You know, if more mangas had their characters blow up the moon, they would solve all their problems. Guess Sailor Moon would be screwed, though. After that, a thief is going around stealing star chips. We get a bit of character insight to Pegasus. He is shown reading comic books about a cartoon rabbit. There's a reason why he does this, but I'll get into it at the end. Dark Yugi duels the thief, who is revealed to be Mokuba. Mokuba is mad at Yugi because Kaiba has still not come out of his coma. A sharp change from pretending to commit suicide in the anime. Mokuba reveals Pegasus wants to beat Yugi so he can take control of Kaiba Corporation. With Kaiba in a coma, Pegasus tried to buy the company from the Big Five. Minor villains here, but are the focus of an anime filler arc. Basically, they'll let Pegasus take over, provided that he defeats Yugi in a duel. But why does Pegasus want Yugi and Kaiba Corporation specifically? We don't know yet. Yugi asks Mokuba to just trust in him defeating Pegasus, but before he can give him back his star chips, this guy, forget his name, takes Mokuba hostage and forces Yugi to duel Ventriloquist with a Kaiba puppet. On a side note, this is very different from how the anime did this. The Japanese version said it was Kaiba's ghost come back from the dead, while 4Kids said it was his evil half brought back from the Shadow Realm. Odd either way. But when the Ventriloquist plays the Blue Eyes White Dragon, Yugi is able to buy time with magical hats, a favorite combo of his. But Yugi is about to lose to the Blue Eyes, but it stops suddenly. At that moment, Kaiba has awakened from his coma. Similarly to how Kaiba couldn't summon Yugi's grandfather's Blue Eyes, this Blue Eyes stops working for the imposter Kaiba. Dark Yugi traps him in a rather cruel penalty, but he was that pissed off because he respects Kaiba as a rival. Yugi now has 6 star chips, but Mokuba has been taken to Pegasus Castle because he holds a key that's needed to obtain some Kaiba Court documents. Meanwhile, Kaiba, in a show that he has changed, begins to make his way to Pegasus Island to rescue his brother. Meanwhile, Maya's been making short work of minor duelists who we don't care about, but she's not satisfied. Losing to Jinochi was too big of a blow to her ego. In her words, something you can show but can't see haunt her. But Ryuzaki shows up, and Maya convinces him that if he defeats Jinochi, she will duel him. Jinochi agrees to the conditions and will duel with no help from his friends. Dark Yugi agrees and lets Yugi take control again. Jinochi's friends are much more supportive of him than they were in the anime, I'll tell you that. Jinochi isn't doing so well, but Dark Yugi tells Yugi that Jinochi has to do this himself, and they should respect that. So the two Yugis are starting to connect to each other. Jinochi starts to make a comeback, but Ryuzaki plays his most powerful card, the Red Eyes Black Dragon. Ryuzaki decides to make a wager. If he wins, he'll get Jinochi's Time Wizard, and if Jinochi wins, he will get Red Eyes, which only serves to remind Jinochi that he has Time Wizard still in the field. Whoops. Jinochi is able to once again win with the Time Wizard and gets the Red Eyes Black Dragon out of it too. Not a bad deal for a beginner. Night falls and Yugi and his friends rest. Pegasus didn't think to provide anyone with food and water, so everybody's on their own. I'm pretty sure that's grounds to sue unless Pegasus mentioned that as a condition. Mai arrives and starts showing a more compassionate side as she allows the gang some food and lets Anzu take a shower. We start getting a little bit of insight into Mai's backstory. Anzu and Mai start to bond a little bit as Mai tells her what she used to do before becoming a duelist. We get some quiet moments that are quickly broken up by the player killer challenging Mai to a duel. Anzu meets Yugi, and we get some more development of the love triangle. Anzu decides that it doesn't matter which Yugi she's talking to. Yugi is Yugi. But before they can connect, Mai's scream is heard. The player killer has eliminated Mai, but Dark Yugi emerges and tells Mai that he will get her star chips back. The player's job is to eliminate players on the island, so there's only 4 finalists. Yugi is priority number 1 because defeating Yugi will grant Pegasus control of Kaiba Corp as previously stated. Yugi bets his life to make up for the difference in star chips, and the player killer holds him to this by putting a wire around his neck that will choke Yugi to death. Oh, wow. Is that more or less violent than trying to incinerate him with fire like in the anime? I will say the art in this duel is really cool as the player killer is shrouded in shadow. The way Yugi wins by using Catapult Turtle to launch Gaia the Fierce Knight into the Castle of Illusions, which causes it to collapse on all his monsters, destroying them. Yeah, let's be real, even back then, before there was an actual card game, you definitely couldn't do that. Yugi does his last penalty game in the series by making the player killer think he's hanging. Yikes. There is a reason why Dark Yugi stops giving penalty games, and we'll cover that at the end. Mai has gotten her starships back, and now she owes Yugi a debt that will come into play later. Meanwhile, Kaiba heads to Duelist Kingdom and remarks that he wants to battle Yugi again. But his bodyguards are traitors. And I mention this because Kaiba stopping a gun with just a card is ridiculous and awesome at the same time. While Yugi may have destroyed his darker thoughts, Kaiba hasn't lost his edge. Later that night, Kaiba lands on Duelist Kingdom, and Yugi greets him warmly despite that the last time he saw them, he was trying to kill all of them in Death Tea. Kaiba does thank Yugi for returning his deck, but vows that they will duel again. Jinochi, however, isn't so forgiving, challenging Kaiba to a duel right there. Kaiba looks down Jinochi as a lowly commoner, but decides now is a good time to test out his dual disc system, a prototype of the more iconic version seen in Battle City. Kaiba rather effortlessly destroys Jinochi, who only makes a dent with Red Eyes. Kaiba is still a huge jerk despite the mind crush, but curiously Jinochi doesn't want Kaiba to know he's fighting for his sister's eyes. After all, scum like Kaiba don't understand what it's like to fight for someone other than himself, right? Kaiba does tell Yugi that he has seen Pegasus duel. He rather easily defeated the American champion Bandit Keith. Just wrote down every tactic he would make and just told a kid to play the right card, completely humiliating him. Kaiba's plan is to use the duel disc to get an edge over Pegasus, but Dark Yugi emerges and warns Kaiba that they too have a reason to duel Pegasus, and that he will be the one to defeat him. Kaiba invades Pegasus' palace and finds that he can't access it without having 10 star chips. Meanwhile, Jinochi is haunted by his loss to Kaiba. The morning comes and the group is ready to start the second day of Duelist Kingdom. Unaware they're being spied on by Bandit Keith's goons, who just want revenge on Pegasus. Kidnapping Jinochi, they force him to duel Ghost Kazuka. Bones in English. For Jinochi, this is a redemption duel for losing so badly to Kaiba. For once, his trump cards fails, which shows that Jinochi is a Gambler duelist, which in real life isn't very viable. Jinochi is down to his last card, but with the Shield and Sword card, Jinochi is able to win all by himself, which is a great moral victory for him. But Bandit Keith shows how much of a snake he is by trapping the gang in the caves and beating up his goons and taking their star chips for himself despite not officially being part of the tournament. Yugi and the gang meet the Mikio brothers, who in addition to a duel ring have a maze. So Yugi and Jinochi will tag team against them, and if they win, they will have 10 star chips, but they will also have to solve the door riddle because it's never simple. It's cool to see Yugi and Jinochi work together, even if the methods they use would never work in the real game. Eventually they emerge victorious. Black Skull Dragon is a really cool looking card, but as their friends search for a way out, the Dark Spirit in the Millennium Ring reaches out to Bakura. If he wants to save his friends, he'll put the ring back on. And he does so, setting forth a chain of events that will last to the end of the series. As Yugi and friends are able to escape the cave, 10 star chips in hand, they will go to Pegasus Castle. Meanwhile, Kaiba has been holding a hostage by putting his head in a briefcase. That's pretty inventive, actually. Pegasus says he will allow Kaiba a chance to rescue his brother, and essentially the last piece of his heart, provided that he defeats Yugi in a duel. With no choice, Kaiba agrees. As Yugi and the others arrive at the castle, they find Kaiba waiting for them. Kaiba does promote Jinochi from a loser to a deadbeat. I guess that's a step up in Kaiba's world. Yugi and Kaiba will duel at the top of the castle, which makes for good scenery. Yugi and Kaiba duel once again, and the two admit they are enjoying the thrill of battling each other once again. Also, Viz, you clearly screwed up on the text here. It says Jinochi for life points when it's supposed to be Yugi. Kaiba's plan is to merge all three Blue Eyes White Dragons together because that's a new card now. Kaiba is able to crush Yugi's deck with a virus that prevents him from summoning monsters of over 1500 attack points. Yugi has to play defensively as Kaiba fuses his three Blue Eyes into the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Yugi is able to stall for time by multiplying Karibo. I don't think that's how it works in the real game, and through other means that would not work. He is able to poison Kaiba's Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon? What? Kaiba realizes that even though he has something he's fighting for, he's still going to lose. Yugi is able to bring Kaiba down to the last of his life points, but Kaiba decides to take a drastic measure. For the 500 life points he lost, he takes 5 steps back, and if Yugi attacks again, he will jump off. Kaiba tells Yugi, "Do it. Prove your worth."
Dude, don't you think you're overreacting a little? I mean, it's just a card game.
Card games are serious business.
Dark Yugi starts to go through with it, but Yugi emerges and stops the attack, which also doesn't work as when you call attack, you can't take it back. But Kaiba does win the duel and the starships. Yugi lost the game. Well, I don't know who rightfully won this game since they both cheated by real life standards. Yugi is scared. He almost killed Kaiba, so he's scared of the game and of his other self. Kaiba rationalizes that all games are conflict. God gave us all a chip of life to play games with. Yugi lost by not having the desire to finish the duel. But Anzu responds that no, Kaiba's the one who truly lost. By being willing to sacrifice himself for the loss, he was willing to throw away the most valuable chip of all, his life. Compared to the anime, Yugi quickly gets back up on his feet because giving up is not in his dictionary. Fortunately, Yugi is saved by Mai's debt to him as she got some extra star chips for Yugi, thus allowing him to participate. Nice way to pay that off. Yugi at first refuses, he's not worthy of it, but Jinochi tells Yugi that while his other self is a great duelist, his own thoughts and feelings matter as well. Yugi comes to his senses and agrees with that. As the finalists enter the castle, they find Kaiba ready to duel Pegasus. Kaiba is actually glad to see Yugi has made it into the palace, showing that he respects him some more. For Kaiba and Pegasus' duel, what this really shows well is just how Pegasus is able to break Kaiba down. First, he breaks his spirit by showing him Mokuba as an empty shell, which causes Kaiba to forgo using his dual disc system. Then Pegasus plays like an amateur, luring Kaiba into a false sense of security before showing that he knows every move Kaiba will make and is prepared for every single one of them. He takes Kaiba's treasured Blue Eyes White Dragon from him, completely destroys his virus combo, then plays Toon World, which is not nearly as broken in real life, and completely decimates Kaiba's monsters. Kaiba is able to adapt by throwing down his cards from his hand. Kaiba just relies on his draw, and he's able to fight back with another Blue Eyes White Dragon, even destroying the Toon Dragon. But Pegasus then uses that same love to destroy all of Kaiba's monsters and leave him with only a weak monster. Kaiba, in this moment, he reflects. He's failed to save his brother, and even says goodbye to Yugi. Pegasus entraps Kaiba's soul in a card. Now the Kaiba brothers are doomed to be separated for all eternity. But Yugi won't have it. Dark Yugi emerges and tells Pegasus he will make him pay for this. In order to be able to duel Pegasus, you must have the left and right hand of the kings. Dark Yugi realizes the reason the left hand is blank is because Pegasus intends to trap whoever he defeats in the card. This is why he gives Jinochi the right hand, to protect him. They don't really spell that out in the anime for some reason, or at least they don't in the English version. And in the manga, Yugi and Anzu recognize Shadi. They obviously don't in the anime because they haven't met him yet. But there's also an unknown woman next to Shadi. Yugi and Bakura take the time to notice the connection between the Millennium items, as now the puzzle, ring, and eye are on the same island. During dinner, Takahashi sets up Hondo wanting to rescue Mokuba because he owes Mokuba for saving his life at Death Tea. Jinochi snaps that the Kaiba brothers got what they deserved, but Hondo reminds him that what Kaiba did for Mokuba, he is doing for Shizuka. It's nice that Takahashi did set this up ahead of time compared to how in the anime he just kinda decided, yeah, I'm gonna do this, bye. As night falls, the duelist rests, but Hondo prepares to invade the dungeons. All the while, under Shadi's portrait, Dark Bakura re-emerges. Thanks to Bakura's help, Honda is able to find Mokuba in the dungeon. Keith steals Jinochi's card, but Yugi spots him in the night. This whole section of Keith beating up Yugi and Jinochi coming to Yugi's rescue isn't in the anime at all, but it does give Jinochi an awesome moment when he beats the crap out of Keith. There's a good bit of character growth for Yugi here as he discusses how he's always being helped by everyone. Kinda odd the anime took this out. Honda is busted out of jail by Dark Bakura as dawn breaks for the tournament finals. Shigoroku tells Yugi that he believes Yugi keeps his other self's heart in balance, and this is something that's going to come into play soon. The finals begin. Our first duel is Yugi versus Mai. Mai absolutely destroys Yugi at first. This is because Dark Yugi is looking ahead to his duel with Pegasus, thus he's not giving Mai his full attention. In the dub, this is changed to Yugi trying to keep Yami Yugi in check, despite the fact that it is clearly Yami Yugi who is dueling, so it made no sense. Mai is able to get Yugi down to 300 life points, but what's really going on here is that the two Yugis are able to realize they are both strong where the other is weak, and now the two of them will work together. With renewed vigor, Yugi begins to turn the duel around. Through the power of, as Jan Green would put it, the pull it out of my butt card, Dark Yugi is able to eventually ritual summon the Blackluster Soldier, which completely breaks Mai's spirits and causes her to surrender, as she now has no way to win. Yugi thanks her though, as because of her, he's remembered what he's fighting for. Bandit Keith almost disqualifies Jinochi because he stole his card. Come to think of it, Hondo and Bakura rescuing Mokuba happens entirely off screen in the manga. That's because you have to focus on the main attraction, which is the tournament. Thanks to Mai giving Jinochi her card, he's able to qualify on time, and thus the second match begins. The two are evenly matched for a while. Jinochi shows just how much he's grown as a duelist. Pegasus knows that Keith is motivated by despair and revenge, while Jinochi is motivated by hope and light. Which will win? Keith resorts to cheating by pulling out what cards he needs from his sleeves, yet despite that, Jinochi is able to win fair and square. Well, fair and square is a little iffy with Duelist Kingdom. Yugi and Jinochi both agree to not duel because they both want the same thing, and only Yugi has a real chance of defeating Pegasus. The anime does have them duel, probably because they had to sell more cards. You all remember Bandit Keith threatening Pegasus. It happens here, but not exactly as you remember it. Pegasus gives him a penalty game, and he is definitely dead here, no question about that. Dark Yugi reflects that he vowed to the Kaiba brothers that they would be reunited, and he's going to make sure that it happens. Bakura and Honda meet up with the rest. Honda notes Bakura is acting weird, but decides to pay it no mind for now. Now, the stage is set for the final duel of Duelist Kingdom, Yugi versus Pegasus. Before they begin, Yugi makes Pegasus promise he will release all the souls he's captured, including Kaiba. Pegasus doesn't know why Yugi would help his enemy, but nonetheless he agrees to it. Pegasus has almost achieved his goal. All that's left now is to defeat Yugi. The beginning of the duel doesn't go too well for Yugi, as Pegasus just reads whatever he has planned and counters accordingly. Dark Yugi plays his last card, Dark Magician, and Magical Hats, but Pegasus knows where Dark Magician is hiding. But when he makes his move, Dark Magician isn't there. When Pegasus looks across the table, it's not Dark Yugi who is facing him, but regular Yugi who realizes that his other self needed help. The two Yugis meet and talk for the first time. Yugi reasons that if Pegasus can read Dark Yugi's mind, he can't read both of their minds. So for the first time, the two Yugis will work together, and it's a great moment. Working together, the two Yugis are able to dispel Toon World, and Pegasus is dealt serious damage. Pegasus manages to give us some very interesting tidbits. Duel monsters came from a game that was played in ancient Egypt. Interesting. Pegasus switches the game to a shadow game, which is too much for Yugi to handle. Being in a shadow game presses Yugi to his limit, but he still insists on drawing one more card to help his other self before finally collapsing. So now Dark Yugi is left to fight alone against Pegasus' relinquished monster. Dark Yugi emerges again, and he's not happy. Pegasus can now read Dark Yugi's mind again, but finds himself blocked by Yugi's friends because, power of friendship and all that? Yeah, sure, whatever. With the ritual card Yugi left, Dark Yugi summons the Magician of Black Chaos. Through a combo of Kuribo and Multiply, Dark Yugi is able to defeat Relinquish, and thus Pegasus, the creator of duel monsters, has been beaten at his own game. The two Yugis work together and were able to overcome this challenge. Pegasus keeps his word and releases the souls he's captured. Pegasus mentions that the power that comes from Millennium items is inherently evil. Dark Yugi demands to know how Pegasus got the Millennium Eye before he sends his soul to oblivion. Wow, he's going to annihilate him either way. Pegasus tells Yugi his story. The woman in the portrait is his love, Cynthia. They were going to spend their lives together, but tragedy broke and Cynthia died at the young age of 17. Pegasus traveled to Egypt to maybe have some hope of reuniting with his love. Pegasus encountered Shadi, and he found himself in a tomb of Egypt. Where the tomb of the Pharaoh lies, Pegasus is chosen as worthy by the Millennium Eye, and for a brief moment he was reunited with his beloved Cynthia. Dark Yugi is left to ponder, what connection does he have to this Pharaoh's tomb and the 7 Millennium items? He also did not inflict a penalty game on Pegasus, as Anzu says if he had finished Pegasus, he would have accepted that he, Dark Yugi, was born of evil, and he will not be evil any longer. And now he's left to wonder, who am I? Where did I come from? Thus setting the stage for the next arc. The Kaiba brothers both awaken and the two reunite, finishing the last piece of Kaiba's heart. It is a surprisingly sweet moment. We went from Kaiba subjecting his own brother to the death penalty to warmly embracing him. Happy endings abound. The two Yugis are now talking to each other, but on that note, you remember how in the anime Pegasus shows up a few times after Duelist Kingdom as a reoccurring character? It doesn't quite go like that here. Oh, he's definitely dead. And Dark Bakura now possesses the Millennium Eye. Kaiba thanks Yugi for saving Mokuba, but admits he can't consider their last duel a true victory. This following section is something the anime glosses over. Yugi and friends are given a ride home on Kaiba's helicopter, and Kaiba's expression is just priceless. Man, I really wish they didn't take this out. With that, Duelist Kingdom comes to a close. Duelist Kingdom is a great arc. The manga is starting to center around the card game because that's what readers wanted to see. But Takahashi did a great job of tying the card game into the mythology he was building. Some rather interesting world building is dropped about Egypt and how Dark Yugi connects to it. The characters definitely get more development, and little teases are dropped of storylines to come. Yugi and Jinochi and even Kaiba have no goals in that they are fighting to save the ones they love, which makes us root for them. Dark Yugi and Yugi finally learn how to work together. Yugi gets most of his development in realizing that he can keep his other self honest. He starts to learn how to help his other self and not rely on Dark Yugi to always save the day. Dark Yugi, on the other hand, upon hearing Pegasus call the Millennium items as evil, decides that, well, he will not be evil anymore. The anime never explained why he stopped doing penalty games. Well, here we have our explanation. Character development, simple as that. He's defeated the creator of duel monsters, but Yugi's not done yet. Dark Yugi must now confront who he is and where did he come from. Jinochi's growth is how he becomes a true duelist. He's got a ways to go and he's not there yet, and a lot of his victories are beginner's luck, but he has the heart of a winner. Pegasus even knows that Jinochi has been fueled by hope and trust, which is how he's gotten so far in the Duelist Kingdom tournament. Even Kaiba slightly acknowledges his growth. We also get some more insight into his family life. He has lived separate from his mother and sister, while he's had to stay with the alcoholic father. Yet despite that, he has remained a good kid at heart. Kaiba starts showing more of a heart than he had before. Compared to trying to put his little brother through the death experience, here he actually cares about Mokuba and wants to save him. And Mokuba is starting to resemble his anime counterpart a bit more. Kaiba is still very much a jerk, but he is actually getting a heart. Effectively, this arc serves as the last bit needed to rebuild it. From here on, he becomes more of an anti-hero, though he never stops being a jerk. A jerk with a heart of gold, but you gotta look deep to find that heart of gold. On the negative side, Anzu, Honda, and Bakura don't get much to do in this arc besides be cheerleaders. Bakura starts to get a little bit of development when his dark self starts to re-emerge, and that'll come into play in Battle City. Anzu gets a bit of development in furthering the love triangle between her and the two Yugis, and she does make friends with Mai. Honda gets to rescue Mokuba, so once again he doesn't get to do much, he's just kinda there. Mai gets a little bit of character development, going from a shallow woman to realizing that Yugi and Jinochi aren't fighting for superficial things like she is, and that causes her to grow as a person. But I saved the best character for last. Pegasus is a great villain. At first he appears challenged with his reading of children's comic books and love of cartoons, but when we learn of his tragedy, the loss of Cynthia, that becomes easier to understand. Becoming an adult is harsh and cruel, and Pegasus lost the one that was going to be with him all his life. So essentially he buried himself in childhood interests because it's a much more simpler time. We actually see his deck be filled with cartoon characters, essentially making him very lighthearted. But when Yugi starts to fight back and do damage, Pegasus' monsters become darker and more grotesque. Essentially, Yugi destroyed his perfect image of childhood, and now Pegasus is going to make him suffer for that. Pegasus was motivated by a desire to see his beloved again, and he didn't care what methods he had to resort to do it. So Pegasus is a tragic villain, but a villain nonetheless. Takahashi would reveal that after his demise at the hands of Dark Bakura, Pegasus would be reunited with Cindy and Dev. Something of a happy ending, I suppose. Our heroes have accomplished their goals, but their journey has only just begun, and that is all for this video. Join me next time with Yu-Gi-Oh!, where we will be covering the brief Dungeon Dice Monsters arc, and then Battle City. See you then! Hey all, back with more Yu-Gi-Oh! I had to take a bit of a break, but today we will be focusing on the Dungeon Dice Monsters arc, which is a pretty short arc, and then Battle City, which is arguably the most famous story in the original Yu-Gi-Oh! As we open, life is returning to normal, and the two Yugis are now talking to each other, which Yugi's mom finds peculiar. Yeah, Yugi has a mom. Poor kid's cut her for some odd reason. Mr. Moto is back to his old self, but is frustrated because he now has competition. A new game shop. Yugi and Anzu check out the new game shop where they meet a clown. Yeah, this little development is kinda odd. As well as Ryuji Otogi, Duke Devlin in English. The guy wearing the clown mask is Ryuji's father, who wants revenge on Yugi's grandfather. We catch up with Yugi's friends. Fortunately, Shizuka's eyes will be restored, so that prize money is being put to good use. Ryuji is impressing the girls with his dice tricks, but Jinochi decides to challenge Ryuji to a game. Who cheats? Because that's what people do in this series, they cheat. Even when they're not supposed to be cheating. So the return to a more classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Story is welcome here. Jerk wrongs Yugi or one of his friends, and Dark Yugi emerges to give said jerk their just desserts. I don't think this is how the game works, but when is it ever? But that little precursor is out of the way, and it's time for the main event, Dungeon Dice Monsters. We get some more insight to Ryuji and his father's relationship, and it ain't exactly good. But despite that, they're all each other has, and what they want is revenge. Dungeon Dice Monsters comes out. But Ryuji's father takes the chance to steal Yugi's Millennium puzzle. So now Yugi must play Dungeon Dice Monsters against Ryuji, without his other self. What this game shows is Yugi's growth. The last time he had to duel without his other self, he got absolutely stumped. Whereas here, he's putting up a much better fight. So Yugi's grandfather forced Ryuji's father to play a very cruel game. Or so it appears, because that doesn't seem like Mr. Moto. The game goes on with Yugi and Ryuji trading blows. But then Mr. Clown decides to get involved and he smashes the Millennium puzzle. Well, that was unexpected. But an unlikely savior comes to Yugi's aid, Dark Bakura. Dark Bakura says that he is now a friend, which I don't think anyone could realistically believe since, look at him! Only Master Xehanort from Kingdom Hearts looks more evil. Well, he needs him and the Millennium puzzle around, which hints at a grander plan he has in store. Meanwhile, Honda tells the others what's going on, and here they know Bakura is wearing the Millennium Ring again. Dark Bakura has a vaunted interest in waking the Pharaoh's memories. Interesting. Through the power of the pull-it-out-of-my-butt move, Yugi is able to win the game. Never fails. Of course, Dark Bakura's real reason is that he wants to make the Pharaoh's power his. Why exactly? What does he want? Well, that'll be a mystery for now. He does infect a piece of the puzzle with his power, which will come into play later. But Mr. Otogi won't take no for an answer and forces Yugi to play another game. Devil's Board Game, his way of taking revenge on Yugi's grandfather. Mr. Otogi tries to solve the puzzle, but the warnings were true. One unworthy to do so will fall into a labyrinth, and in his ignorance, a fire breaks out. Jinochi and the others arrive to save the day, and Mr. Otogi starts to see the error of his ways, as Yugi chose to still be kind to him. But Yugi won't leave without the puzzle, and Jinochi allows him to work on it while everyone else escapes. In the span of 10 minutes, Yugi is able to finish the entire puzzle. Well, adrenaline will do amazing things to a person. Jinochi finds Yugi still won't let go of the puzzle, but thanks to advice from Dark Yugi, he's able to do some quick thinking and escapes from fire in time. Everyone's okay, but Anzu wonders, what will happen when Yugi inevitably puts the Millennium puzzle back in Egypt? It's there that we get our answer, as a patient shows Yugi an ad for an ancient Egyptian exhibit. It's funny how this segues into the next arc is totally absent in the anime. This woman named Ishizu, who has a Millennium item around her neck, and speaking of which, she is presently meeting with Kaiba that night. Ishizu shows Kaiba the origin of duel monsters on a tablet of the Pharaoh, and the two figures on the tablet look just like Yugi and Kaiba. But Ishizu introduces Kaiba to the three new monsters. The Egyptian gods, Obelisk, Osiris, or Slifer as it's called in English, because 4Kids decided to name it after one of the show's executive producers in English. And lastly, Ra. These cards were so powerful that Pegasus only made one of each. Pegasus buried the god cards so they could never be used, but the ghouls found them, called rare hunters in English. Ishizu tells Kaiba to hold a tournament that will surely attract the ghouls to a large gathering of duelists, and gives him Obelisk to help lure them out. Of course, Kaiba decides that he will possess all three god cards and become the Duel King. What if a female gets them all? Wouldn't it be Duel Queen? Just observing. I don't know. The two Yugis are finally able to speak again. Dark Yugi confesses to Yugi. He has no idea where he comes from or what his name is, but maybe if they go there, they can find out. But doing so may cause them to part forever, and neither Yugi desires that. Meanwhile, Kaiba tests his new dual disc system. the more iconically known version of it. This is where the series tries to follow the Duel Monsters' real-life rules more closely since the game was coming out at the time. It does give an insight into Kaiba's thinking. He believes Yugi represents the past while he represents the future. Kaiba is able to defeat his Blue Eyes deck by playing Obelisk. Yeah, I'm guessing Ishizu knew Kaiba wasn't going to give the card back to her. Meanwhile, Dark Yugi is wondering, who am I? But he doesn't need to know. Things are fine the way they are. But Yugi sets up his other self with a date with Anzu. The way the anime did this was much funnier. Anzu points out to him that she understands what he's going through. She herself plans to move to America to chase her dream after graduation, but that Dark Yugi may himself leave when all is said and done. We get some more time to show off Anzu's skill, which is dancing. A bit of a difference from the anime where Dark Yugi just looks bored out of his mind. Here he seems to find the DDR game intriguing. Remember, he's supposed to be the king of games, not just a card game. Dark Yugi once again tells her how he wants to know who he is, but things are fine. But Anzu tells him that if he wants to find out who he is, he should follow his heart. Kaiba begins to gather Battle City duelists. A little change here. The English version has Kaiba disbelieve in magic no matter how much it's shown to be true, and it gets really ridiculous. Whereas here, it's actually supposed to be like, he knows it exists, it's more that he just doesn't care about it. Dark Yugi and Anzu go to the museum where they see the tablet, and Dark Yugi realizes the Pharaoh from 3,000 years ago is him. He is his trapped soul inside the Millennium puzzle. Ishizu warns Dark Yugi that a battle will approach, and the last of the Millennium items will be gathered here. Yeah, there's no you must win for the fate of the world going on. Dark Yugi just wants to regain his memory. He doesn't want to tell Yugi just yet, but he can't keep secrets from him, as with their deck they will fight as one. But then they meet up with Mai and find that Kaiba is holding a Duel Monsters tournament. In this tournament, you must play with a duel disc, and the loser will give up their rarest card. The place of battle is Domino City, and Battle City is set to begin. It's amazing how quickly Kaiba was able to set all this up. I guess that's what happens when you're rich. It's here we meet our villain, Marik Ishtar, who we find out is Ishizu's brother. What does he want? Well, that's complicated. Yugi and Jinochi both agree to enter the Battle City tournament. Yugi wants to face Kaiba fair and square, and Jinochi is upset because he wasn't invited. In fact, he's only allowed to qualify because the shopkeeper, who is a ghoul, notices that his rarest card is Red Eyes, and thus changes his ranking to 5 stars. I mean, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be able to do that from there, but whatever, gotta get Jinochi into the tournament. Just don't have the ranking system at all. On his way home, Jinochi is confronted by the rare hunters. So are we just using the English name now, Viz? Even though you had no problem using the Japanese name. So much for consistency, eh? Anyway, the ghouls use a counterfeit Exodia to beat Jinochi and steal his Red Eyes. The two Yugis get ready to duel. Yugi isn't sure what his other self desires, but is determined to help him see it through. Yugi and Mai meet up again where we see some old faces are in the tournament. Kaiba explains the rules of the tournament once again. You must get 6 locator cards to determine where the finals will take place. Only 8 will get to the finals. Always thought it was strange how Duelist Kingdom only had 4 finalists. Jinochi confronts the man who stole his Red Eyes, and upon learning his plight, Dark Yugi decides to duel to reclaim Red Eyes. Okay, Viz is trying now to explain that the Rare Hunters are the combat division of the ghouls, even though I don't think that's actually true, but I guess we'll go with it. Yugi refuses to listen to Jinochi's advice, because it's unfair for him to know what his opponent's strategy will be. Sure, I guess. Not that it matters. Yugi figures out his strategy and promptly dismantles it. But Marik shows how he can mind control his minions with the Millennium Rod, and tells Yugi that they will meet, and of the God cards. Yugi is given a puzzle card in Jinochi's Red Eyes, and though he offers it back to his friend, Jinochi turns it down. He won't accept it until he can prove himself a true duelist, and promises to duel Yugi for the card back. Next fight is Jinochi versus Esperoba, who defeats Ryuzaki easily with psychic powers. Jinochi makes a fool of himself by not knowing the super expert rules. Typical dumb Jinochi moment. One difference is Roba claims to be channeling the spirit of Pegasus, who, as you may remember, is dead in the manga. Once again, Viz, you used the Japanese name, even though you previously used the English name. Consistency! Jinochi is able to figure out that Roba is not actually using ASP, but has someone spying on his cards. Roba is able to summon Jinzo, who has the special ability to negate trap cards. That's pretty useful. Through some tenacity and luck, Jinochi emerges victorious and gets Jinzo for his deck. Not bad. Robo says the reason he wins is so his little brothers won't get bullied. Jinochi sympathizes as he knows what it's like to fight for a younger sibling. All's well that ends well, and Jinochi is one step closer to being a true duelist. Kaiba then beats up a jerk with Obelisk, which is just him stroking his ego, which is typical Kaiba. Marik realizes that Ishizu knew Kaiba would hold the tournament and draw him out, but decides it does not matter. Marik wants to face Yugi first. Why is he priority number 1? Marik has a personal vendetta against the Pharaoh's vessel, as he believes he is the one who killed Marik's father. The Yugis return to the card shop where they find Pandora waiting for him, who also uses the Dark Magician, so this next duel will determine who is the true master of the Dark Magician. Pandora created a very unique arena to beat Yugi in. Yet once again, Yugi is put in a life or death situation, as the loser of this duel will have their legs get cut off. 4Kids changed this to send you to the Shadow Realm.
Help! Somebody save me from the harmless dark energy discs that won't kill me!
Yugi is able to once again decipher the cheating taking place and is able to summon his Dark Magician first. But Pandora gets his own on the field. It goes pretty back and forth for a while, but we see the difference in how they treat their Dark Magicians. Pandora treats his as a disposable pawn while Yugi values his servants, which is probably better than how most Egyptian pharaohs treated their servants. Well, they didn't have servants, they had slaves. The effects of the Dark Magic Curtain allows both players to use it? No, that's not true. I've used that card. Yugi summons Dark Magician Girl. Yes, the card that launched 1,000 fanarts. Don't believe me? Yeah, nearly 7,000 pictures of her nude. That's like more than any other character in this series. Dark Magician Girl defeats Pandora, who tries to cheat his way out of getting his legs cut off, but Marik decides to make sure that happens. Yugi retakes control and saves Pandora because that's the kind of guy he is. Through Marik, Yugi learns of the Pharaoh, and that Marik desires to kill said Pharaoh and become the king himself. But Yugi now realizes what his other self is fighting for, to regain his lost memories. He hints that Yugi will next face Osiris, and pretty much leaves Pandora to commit suicide. Jeez, that's dark. Anzu, Bakura, and Shigorku search for their friends, and Anzu notes that they are drifting apart, as friends typically do. They do meet up with Jinochi, who reveals that his sister is still recovering from her operation, and he wants her to be able to see him win, but Jinochi is tricked into a duel with Haga, who hasn't stopped being a cheater. Honda and Ryuji travel to pick up Shizuka. Hazu wants Shizuka to be there for her brother when he gets to the finals. The anime put these three in a love triangle, which is probably done to give Honda some more volume as a character. I do like how Honda tells Shizuka that her brother is fighting for her. She's scared to take off her bandages because she might still be blind, but Honda tells her that she and Jinochi must give each other courage. But Ryuji is right to say that Shizuka must make that choice to remove the bandages herself. Jinochi and Haga duel. Haga is able to gain control and summons his Insect Queen, but Jinochi is able to mount a comeback and is able to win, claim a puzzle card, and the Insect Queen. As Kaiba continues to search for the God cards, Marik arrives in Battle City and takes a duel disc for himself. As the two Yugis talk, Yugi tells Dark Yugi that while he's happy to have him as a friend, he knows he can't rely on him forever, and that he must learn to fight for himself. Marik's doll servant confronts Yugi. Dark Yugi knows that he has a God card, but that he will defeat it. The two duel and Yugi is able to put up a valiant fight, but eventually Marik summons Osiris the Sky Dragon, which is actually erroneous. Osiris was the god of the dead, not the sky. The God card is Yugi's ultimate challenge. How can he win against such a mighty foe, especially when its special ability allows it to gain 1,000 attack points of every card in its user's hand? Dark Yugi is so stunned he's frozen in fear at its immense power. First time he's ever been that rattled by something. Yugi falls to his knees. He can't win. But Kaiba appears and tells him that there is a way to defeat God and Yugi will find a way. Yugi is able to draw the key card and traps Osiris in an infinite loop that forces Marik to keep drawing cards, and per the rule, when you run out of cards to draw, you automatically lose. Thus, Yugi gets a puzzle card and a God card, thus putting him on equal footing with Kaiba and Marik. But Marik gets the last laugh as he tells Yugi that his friends are now targets for the ghouls. What's great about this is that all the plot points start converging here. Yugi gets to see Kaiba's God card in action, and Marik has arrived in Domino City. As Jinochi searches for another duelist, Dark Bakura senses a new Millennium item, and thus takes over. It's here that we establish that Bakura has an occult deck, which is pretty creepy. Jinochi will duel Ryota. It really feels like Jinochi is, for the most part, just dueling whoever Yugi beat in Duelist Kingdom to show that he is a better duelist now. Of course, he forgot to take out the Parasite card, which is typical dumb Jinochi comedy. Outside, as Marik prepares to make his move, Dark Bakura confronts him. We see Marik has a connection to the Pharaoh's tomb. Dark Bakura wants the Pharaoh's memories. Marik just wants to kill Yugi. I think Takahashi realized it would be beneficial to team these two up for the time being. Meanwhile, Jinochi is forced to confront that he has always chased Yugi's shadow as a duelist, and here is no different. This duel is good at progressing Jinochi's character arc, and giving closure to Ryota's, particularly the bit about his missing father. We get to see just how twisted Dark Bakura is as he purposefully injures himself so that the real Bakura will be injured, and thus be able to be used against Yugi. Through tenacity, Jinochi is able to defeat Ryota. Ryota takes value in the Fisherman card because he believes it's the soul of his father. Jinochi sympathizes, but Ryota realizes he doesn't need a card to remember his father, and gives it to Jinochi. A nice moment to be sure. Outside, Marik takes the wounded Bakura to Yugi's friends as he prepares to make his move to capture Jinochi and Anzu. Yugi and Kaiba make their way to the arena. Kaiba decides to continue being a smug little prick because he wouldn't beat Kaiba if he wasn't. Kaiba is still a massive jerk to Jinochi, declaring that he will disqualify him as soon as he sees him. It seems like Kaiba looks down on Jinochi like a lowly commoner. Out of nowhere, a ghoul makes it so that Kaiba can't summon his god card. Somehow. Yugi and Kaiba now face the Mask of Light and Darkness, which can actually apply to both teams. Two unlikely pairs dueling each other, but in the case of Yugi and Kaiba, who is the light and who is the darkness? I wonder. Of course, the whole drama of the duel is that the masked players work together seamlessly, while Kaiba refuses to cooperate with Yugi because he's a jerk. Slowly, Yugi and Kaiba are able to gain the upper hand, as Kaiba is repeatedly in Yugi's debt because he still saves him from defeat. Yeah, maybe stop being a huge jerk-ass, Kaiba. Kaiba does catch on to the benefits of having a partner, and manages to turn the two masked players against each other. I guess that's his way of helping. Through some awesome teamwork, they were able to summon Obelisk and pretty much win the match, but Marik takes control of the remaining ghoul and taunts Yugi to find him. Kaiba and Yugi share their philosophies. What Kaiba tells Yugi is something he'll have to struggle with. Kaiba wants to see Yugi's answer, and so they head to find Jinochi. Marik has brainwashed Anzu and Jinochi, and Rishit has stolen 12 puzzle cards, so they cheated their way to the finals. Kaiba brings up the point to Yugi that he may have to duel his friend to win. Of course, the manga actually explains how Honda knows Jinochi is at the pier because he recognizes the boat horn. The situation is very similar in the anime, except here he has Anzu ready to swallow a pill that will kill her on the spot, which is somehow worse than crushing her. The loser of this death duel will plummet to the bottom of the sea and drown. Even Kaiba is appalled. I don't know about that. You were pretty bad, Kaiba. But the ghouls capturing Mokuba put an end to Kaiba's interference. Yugi gambles that the Red Eyes will snap Jinochi out of his brainwashing, but the duel begins, and Jinochi quickly takes the lead with spell cards that directly attack your opponent. Dark Yugi's words do start to get through to Jinochi a little bit, but it's here that Yugi decides to take another step out of his other self's shadow, as he is able to reach Jinochi's heart in a secret test by seeing if he would take the Red Eyes, but Jinochi manages to win the fight within, showing that he's still in there, and Yugi taking out the puzzle shows that he's ready to step up as his own man, and not rely on his other self all the time. The drama and tension is high. Kaiba rescuing Mokuba by drawing a card and throwing it into the hand of the ghoul is actually kind of funny, and a blow to his ego since it was his blue eyes. This is pretty much the culmination of Yugi and Jinochi's character arcs up to this point, and seeing Jinochi fight out the brainwashing is pretty satisfying. I know it's a cliche, but it's done well here. The moment where Jinochi regains his mind is really nicely done in the anime. Well, the Japanese version. Yugi, of course, isn't going to sacrifice his friend and prefers to go down. The way the anime and manga have Jinochi deplete his life points is done a little differently. In the anime, they make up some rule that allows Red Eyes to deplete Jinochi's life points, but in the manga, it's implied Red Eyes does Jinochi a favor. You know, the cards have a heart and all. Both have Jinochi spare Yugi with his key. While the manga has the gang arrive just as the anchors fall down, who saves Jinochi is very different. In the manga, it's Kaiba who does it, albeit until he's sure Jinochi's probably drowned, which is pretty bad. And I think the anime made a good change in having Shizuka do it. Although Kaiba does acknowledge Jinochi as a decent duelist in both versions. Yugi's friends arrive and Dark Yugi acknowledges that Yugi took a stand for himself and knows the day will come when Yugi surpasses him, and that day is coming sooner than either of them think. I will admit the way the manga does Shizuka removing her bandages is superior, as it feels more dramatic and tense, but both versions work in their own right. Kaiba has even seen the answer that he's been looking for, and all that's left for now is the Battle City Finals. All the plot points are wrapped up, and now everybody's going to meet at the finals. We see the last finalist, Dark Bakura, who defeated his familiar opponent off-screen. And there's something he does that I just have to play.
Your soul is mine.
The main tournament is over. It is time now to begin the finals. And we'll stop there for now. I'll save the analysis of the characters for the next video since we still got the finals to do. And we still got quite a bit to go through with this arc. And unfortunately, from what I understand, this arc took so long that people started to lose interest. Or so I read. Look forward to Yu-Gi-Oh! Part 4, the Battle City Finals, coming very soon. So now the 8 finalists have been determined and they have gathered at the location. The gang sees Bakura out of the hospital and immediately suspect foul play. You see, in the manga, Yugi suspects something is up. Unlike the anime where everybody seems to be an idiot.
I can't believe we're expected to believe all this.
And yet apparently we do. God, we're stupid. This must be what it feels like to be Tristan.
Not sure if this was in the anime, but Marik has control over Anzu and normal Bakura. This serves to set up that they deflect their suspicions of Namo being Marik over the Rishid, Odeon in English. The location of the finals is on a blimp, and they will battle 1,000 feet into the air. Kaiba's got a sense of style, I suppose. Everyone says their motives. It also highlights how Yugi feels like a supporting protagonist in his manga, which, to be fair, he is stepping out of his other self's shadow. The final duelist appears. It's obviously Ishizu. Jinochi starts to get a little hyped up, but Kaiba proceeds to again be a jerk, as expected. Kaiba tells Yugi that he will have to use his God card in the finals, and the two Yugis do seem to agree with that. The matches are determined. First up will be Yugi versus Bakura, and Dark Bakura wastes no time in revealing himself, which Dark Yugi suspected. Takahashi is setting up key plot elements for the next arc, such as Dark Bakura wanting Yugi to open the Dark Door. At first, Dark Bakura seems like a weak duelist, but intentionally is playing so he can lure Yugi into complacency. Dark Bakura is able to summon Destiny Board. When the word death is spelled, Yugi will automatically lose. 4Kids changes the final in America, because on a kids show you can't say die most of the time. Yugi figures out the weakness of the Destiny Board, and though Bakura is able to keep the board up, Yugi draws Osiris just when he needed it. This happens quite often. Marik decides to release the real Bakura from his control to make Yugi hesitate to attack, which almost works, but Dark Bakura does not let it happen, as he still needs Bakura as a host, so he basically tells Yugi, I'll let you win for now. We get some insight into Rishid's character, as while he is loyal to Marik, he does not like the path he is going down. Bakura is taken to the hospital wing, but unknowingly they have left Marik in control of the Millennium Ring. The second duel proceeds to take place, Jinochi versus Rishid. Jinochi believes this is Marik he's dueling, but he's fighting for revenge. But of course we have to start things off with a typical done Jinochi moment. It's getting a little tiring, to be honest. Jinochi does pretty badly, but he's able to start mounting a comeback with Jinzo. Marik wants Rishid to play Ra, but Rishid is reluctant to do so, as only those chosen by the Pharaoh can wield the God cards. Also, Marik gave him a duplicate card, which totally isn't going to come back to bite him. No, sir. And we do get some insights into Rishid's backstory. He essentially lived in the dark his whole life as a tomb keeper. The son of the family is subjected to a ritual that basically puts a lot of tattoos on their back. Marik doesn't want to do it because it will hurt like hell. Rishid offers to do it in his place, but we get to see just how awful Marik's father is as he refuses. What is it with Shonen Jump and terrible fathers? Essentially, Rishid had no family, but decided to share in Marik's pain, even if it was destroying him. Jinochi is about to lose, but comes to the belief that this is not the Marik who brainwashed him. This causes Marik to demand Rishid finish Jinochi with Ra. Wow, that actually reminds me of Madara's face when he sends Hashirama's chakra. Somehow, the real Ra is angered by this counterfeit copy, and so strikes both Rishid and Jinochi down. So, with both players down, whoever gets up first will win, kinda like Goku versus Jackie Chun. But with Rishid down, a dark change occurs in Marik. More on this in a minute. Jinochi wins by standing up. This is a major misstep by Takahashi, as Jinochi really should have won this duel legitimately. It just makes him look bad. Before he loses consciousness, Rishid begs that Marik's dark half not take over, but it's too late. Dark Marik has emerged. I think he was foreshadowed very briefly, but he kinda just takes over as the main villain. Not as bad as Kaguya, as Dark Marik manages to make himself very memorable by just being a sadistic killer, but he could have been set up a lot better. As the next duel is about to begin, Jinochi decides to be a jerk to Mai for no real reason. Never quite understood this, and it causes Mai to regress in her own character development, as now she's back to relying on no one but herself. Meanwhile, Dark Marik is about to murder Rishid, but for whatever reason decides not to.
Oh no, I'm late for a children's card game. This somehow prevents me from simply lowering my arm and murdering you. Punctuality, my Achilles heel.
Okay, in the manga it's implied Marik was able to sway him away from doing it, or at least I think that's the implication of this panel here. Dark Marik makes the duel into a shadow game, which is the first sign of how he likes to play. What Dark Marik does is, whenever a monster is destroyed, the player will take damage. Yeah, this is a lot more gruesome here, since in the anime, she just loses her memory. I imagine it was toned down to avoid violence. It does an effective job of showing just how cruel Dark Marik is, and Mai gets to show some resiliency as she's able to get Ra in her hand, but Dark Marik isn't very worried. Sure enough, when she tries to summon it, Ra is just a sphere in which only Dark Marik knows how to release it from. This is just brutal. Good thing it's not real. Yeah, the danger is that if Ra attacks Mai, she will die. Jinochi acts as a shield making up for its earlier jerkassery, but Dark Yugi shields him in return, as due to being the main character, he has plot armor. Dark Marik inflicts a penalty game on Mai, where in 24 hours, she will die by getting her flesh eaten. Yeesh. This has changed in the anime, probably so people wouldn't worry about her during the virtual world filler arc. Now there's only one duel to do in the quarterfinals, and it's Kaiba and the mystery duelist, who is revealed to be Ishizu, Marik's sister. Ishizu knows full well what's going to happen, but Kaiba is, as usual, a jerkass. It's nice to humble Kaiba just a little bit. There's this weird moment where Ishizu and Dark Marik speak telepathically, or at least that's what I get is going on here. Or I guess they're speaking through their Millennium items. Ishizu rather awesomely dismantles Kaiba's entire deck, but Yugi tells Kaiba their destiny is to battle in Battle City. A nice little moment of respect between the two. Kaiba plays Obelisk, which is what Ishizu wants him to do, but just before he can play into her trap, the Millennium Rod shows Kaiba a vision of the Blue Eyes, which tells him that he must use Blue Eyes, and in a rather awesome moment, Kaiba sacrifices Obelisk to summon Blue Eyes. With that, Kaiba wins the duel, but Ishizu is happy, as it means the future can be changed. The gang checks up on Mai and remember there's a danger, that if Dark Marik isn't defeated in 24 hours, she will die. Shizuka is horrified. She didn't expect there to be real danger to the duels being played, but Ishizu tells her that conflict is part of the world. It has existed for as long as the world has turned, but there's still hope and good worth fighting for. A message that I think people need to hear today. Ishizu tells them of her family story, how cruel their father was to Rishid. Marik and Ishizu fled to the surface as children just to see what it was like, but they were found by Shadi, who told them the Pharaoh's return was imminent. They return to the tomb and find that their father was prepared for them possibly disobeying him, and he is brutally torturing Rishid. At this moment, this is where Marik's darker half emerges and skins his father alive. He was a major bastard, but even that is extreme. Shadi tells Marik that this was the doing of the soul of the Pharaoh, which causes Marik's vendetta against Yugi. As the duels retire to bed, Ishizu gives her necklace to Yugi. Its powers are waning, and it will be more useful to him than to her. Anzu asks Ishizu what will happen to Dark Yugi. Ishizu's answer is vague, but it's pretty obvious what she means. Dark Marik goes to kill Rishid, but this time he's stopped by Dark Bakura, who has teamed up with a leftover piece of Marik's soul. Remember, he did leave a piece of himself in Bakura. So now one more duel, Dark Bakura versus Dark Marik. So many people with the same name. Marik has started to take responsibility for his actions, and admitting that his father's death is as much his fault as his darker half. Curiously, Dark Bakura starts to say something about Shadi, but doesn't finish. But now it's evil versus evil, as whoever loses will be wiped out of existence. Dark Bakura puts Ra in the graveyard and seems to have won. But Dark Marik reveals an unknown second effect.
Now I shall use Mega Ultra Chicken's secret ability that I just this second made up.
Yeah, definite ass-pull vibes there. Regardless, Dark Marik effectively uses a one-hit kill move. Dark Bakura isn't worried though as he vanishes into darkness. Marik is able to possess Anzu and tells Ishizu to rescue Rishid. She probably should have done that anyway. As Kaiba deciphers more of Ra's text, and we get insight into what Kaiba is hoping to accomplish with this tournament, he can be free from his stepfather's curse. Meanwhile, the two Yugis meet in the mind as they discuss Dark Yugi's memories. We see Dark Bakura's managed to survive through the PC left behind in Millennium Puzzle. As the blimp descends on Alcatraz Tower, Kaiba thinks he has deduced a strategy to defeat Ra. See, it's good that we're setting up a way to defeat him here. Morning arrives, and our heroes step out to Alcatraz. Kaiba reveals the stepfather used to have Kaiba Corp be a military company before Seto dismantled it and made it a game company. The way they'll decide the semis is through a four-way duel. I guess that's interesting. Kaiba wants to duel Yugi, as with two god cards they'll have an advantage over Marik. Jinochi and Yugi are torn over who they want to duel next. Of course, Jinochi ends up with a bad hand, and Kaiba decides to take the opportunity to take him out. But Yugi bails him out, which shows Jinochi that once again, he is depending on Yugi. There is a very satisfying moment where Jinochi is able to cause some damage to Kaiba. Take that for being a jackass, Kaiba. Of course, Kaiba proceeds to rub it in by screwing him over, even when Jinochi isn't attacking him. Jinochi manages to convince Yugi to attack him, and Yugi realizes that in turn, Jinochi wants to duel Marik. And while Jinochi is able to turn the tables on Dark Marik, the result is indeed Marik versus Jinochi, and then Yugi versus Kaiba. One minor difference I'll point out is that while the manga has Shizuka be the one watching the duels while Otogi looks after Mai, in the anime it's the other way around. An odd change, as I think it's important that Shizuka be there to witness her brother's character growth. Kaiba tells Yugi and Shinochi that he might develop a strategy to defeat Marik, but Yugi points out rather boastfully that his one mistake is that he has to face him. Dark Marik prepares a vicious shadow game, but Shinochi is determined to take him on. Dark Marik's combo is just meant to make his opponents suffer as much as they possibly can. Shinochi is able to show his growth as he matches Marik move for move, eventually forcing Marik to summon his God card. As Marik prepares to make the killing move, Kaiba actually acknowledges Shinochi with respect for once. Marik intends to reduce Shinochi to nothing, and the attack is devastating. But despite that, Shinochi survives, much to the amazement of everyone. This is what it's all about. All he has to do is play a monster, and he wins. But unfortunately, he's not the main character of the manga, so he has to feign before he can call an attack, and now it looks like Shinochi is dead. As his friends and sister cry in despair, Kaiba says to himself that he acknowledges Shinochi as a true duelist, and his efforts didn't go to waste, as he now knows the key to defeating Ra. Dark Yugi is finally broken. This tournament may have cost him his best friend. All that's left is his hatred for Marik. But the talent grants him a vision of the future, which shows him dueling Shinochi, and with that he decides to fight on. Now the duel everyone's been waiting for, Yugi and Kaiba's rematch. Kaiba is still dead set in his ways. All that matters is the duel. But Yugi believes in finding himself. Kaiba even goes as far as to make a hologram of a battlefield, just to make it grander. Must be nice to have unlimited pockets. This is one of my favorite duels in the whole series because I can best describe it as counter after counter. The artwork when Yugi summons Osiris is really impressive. Soon enough, it's God card versus God card. The clash of the gods is quick as they both destroy each other, but the clash causes Yugi and Kaiba to see the past, which is their past selves dueling in ancient Egypt. This was a plot point that Takahashi wasn't able to fully flesh out, unfortunately. Effectively, this is the culmination of the battle that began 3,000 years ago, and after their god cards are gone, they're back to their usual cards, the Dark Magician and the Blue Eyes White Dragon. As the battle goes on, Yugi is able to destroy one of the Blue Eyes with Jinochi's Red Eyes, which gives Jinochi a victory over Kaiba, and this causes Jinochi to wake up as Kaiba brings the duel down to its final 3 turns. The heroes set out to cheer for Yugi. Kaiba is able to fuse the 3 Blue Eyes into the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. Kaiba tells Yugi that he will bury the past, which even Mokuba takes some issue with, as Kaiba used to smile back then. Yugi responds to Kaiba by saying that he won't win with anger and hatred. Now it's down to Dark Paladin versus Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. But once again, Yugi dismantles Kaiba's strategy, and even though he only needs to take out one dragon, he destroys all 3, further shattering Kaiba's ego. Kaiba is aghast. He lost the tournament when everything was set up for him to be the ultimate champion. You're not the main character, Kaiba, that's why you lost. You're the rival. Although he does give Yugi Obelisk rather reluctantly. Now the stage is set for Yugi versus Marik in the finals. Kaiba doesn't care. This was his tournament and he's out now. Ishizu reasons with Kaiba, pointing out that the priest on the inscriptions, who was Seto's past self. Mokuba even points out that he agrees with Yugi that Kaiba has become enamored with hatred, and this seems to sink in. Kaiba does give Yugi the card that can defeat Ra, but only because he's sure Yugi will lose. At long last, though, the finals begin. Dark Yugi versus Dark Marik. Once again, Dark Marik makes it a shadow game. Only this time when their monsters are destroyed, it is the person's other self who will be damaged. Soon enough, it becomes Osiris versus Ra, but Dark Marik is able to take the upper hand. But through the pull it out of my butt move, Yugi draws the key card he needs. Dark Marik fuses with Ra, but since he's about to destroy his own life point, Dark Marik uses diffusion to unseparate from Ra.
No. I don't think that's right.
No worries, Yugi summons Obelisk to the field. While I have issues with Dark Marik taking over as the main villain, at least Takahashi acknowledges that Marik is still responsible for his own actions, and he apologizes to Rishid before he fades away. But this gives Rishid the strength to rise from his bed and make his way to the dueling arena. Marik takes possession of Anzu and tells Yugi that he admits his revenge quest was misguided. Marik essentially gives Yugi permission to defeat his dark self, and possibly destroy him as well. Takahashi takes the time to show that none of the characters blame Marik, just his evil side, which is a little sketchy because, no, Marik was still doing all that. Yugi is able to duel Marik to a standstill, and even brings out the Dark Magician, but they are at a stalemate, as Marik will still have 1 life point left, and the good Marik will be wiped out. But Rishid arrives and manages to convince Marik to fight from within, and does not give in to the darkness. Move towards the light. That's something that comes up again. Marik is able to take control of his dark self, and as Dark Yugi wipes out Ra, Marik has emerged as the dominant half, while Dark Marik is about to be wiped out of existence. Marik takes it upon himself to destroy his dark half, and by surrendering, his dark half is lost to the darkness forever. With that, Yugi is the winner of Battle City, and oh hi Shizuka and Ruji! Takahashi forgot to draw you two for a while. All of Dark Marik's victims have returned, even Dark Bakura. Unfortunately, I get the feeling he was just watching and waiting inside the puzzle all this time. Yugi also gets Raw, so now he has all 3 Egyptian god cards, and the Millennium Ring, and the Rod. And Marik fulfills his duty as Tomb Keeper, and so the Istar family can finally be free of their duty. All stumbles aside, this ending does feel earned. But Anzu gets the feeling there's not much time left before Dark Yugi leaves. Bakura and Mai are awake, and the tower is about to blow up. Nuts. Kaiba reflects that maybe he's starting to believe in this power of friendship. So perhaps this means he can finally take his first steps out of the darkness, although dark-sided dimensions would show that this didn't happen, unfortunately. Unfortunately, Bakura finds the Millennium Ring. This isn't going to end well. Kaiba decides to take a ride in an airship because it looks cooler, I guess. This is Kaiba's last major appearance in the manga, but it seems he and Yugi part on good terms. Battle City is over, but one duel remains, Yugi vs Jinochi, and we don't see how it goes, and I think that's for the better. We don't know who won, but it doesn't matter, and I'll get to why in a minute. So at the end of the day, Battle City was pretty long, so long that people started to lose interest, and with Takahashi's health declining, it ensured the next arc would be the last. Dark Yugi and Yugi both take steps to finding themselves. Dark Yugi finding his past, Yugi is beginning to step out of his other self's shadow, and Dark Yugi pretty much spells out that the time is coming when Yugi will surpass him, and it's coming very soon. Kaiba sees Yugi as representing the past while he represents the future, but he's wrong. He is the one who is still tied to his past, and he wants to bury it. He's been so consumed by hatred and anger that he will never fully bury it unless he does let go. The ending is optimistic for Kaiba, showing that maybe, just maybe, he's starting to step out of the darkness that's been consuming him, and his and Yugi's final parting is a good one. Granted, Dark Side Dimension shows that doesn't happen, but that movie didn't exist yet. Jinochi, despite all the stumbles, is finally able to prove himself a true duelist. He just didn't win because he's not the main character. However, his side plot with his sister is resolved nicely, and his journey to become a true duelist does feel complete. As for Marik, well, Dark Marik is a little out of nowhere. He has the personality of a good villain, as he manages to show just how depraved and sadistic he is. But what is he? Unlike Dark Yugi and Dark Bakura, I think Dark Marik is just a split personality. It feels like Takahashi wanted to have Marik be redeemed, so his darker half was created so as to absolve him of some of the more heinous deeds he did, and he does realize his revenge was misplaced. It was himself who killed his father, not Yugi, but he is forgiven a little too easily. I mean, if I rag on Naruto for that, I gotta be fair here. At least Marik knows what he did was wrong and seeks to atone for it. Overall, this arc had quite a few stumbles. It's far longer than it needs to be, but it did ultimately have a satisfying conclusion, and it furthered the story and the characters. After this, there was no need to do duel monsters again, as narratively you couldn't top the Egyptian gods. So all that was left to do one more arc, to find out Dark Yugi's memories. Join me next time for the finale of Yu-Gi-Oh! Millennium World. This is the end, beautiful friends. We have reached the end of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. Far more emotional than I expected now that Takahashi is no longer with us. The anime dragged its feet by giving us 2 filler arcs, the Silvori Calcos and the Kaiba Court Grand Prix. Because this arc isn't about the card game so much, we're going back to our roots a little bit by focusing on Egyptian mythology. But first we have a story about how Grandpa Moto found the Millennium Puzzle. To put it as shortly as possible, Grandpa was betrayed by the bandits he was working with, and surely would have died were it not for the Pharaoh coming to his rescue. The implication is that the Pharaoh knew that this is when it was finally time for him to be set free. So we cut back to the present day, and Yugi has just gotten all 3 Egyptian god cards. Although if you go by the anime, they were stolen and he had to get them back because there would be no tension if he had the god cards on hand to bail him out. Even though in the actual game, a god deck is very beatable. Trust me, I know from experience. The conversation turns interesting as Grandpa reveals he knows the Pharaoh's soul has been living inside Yugi all this time, and in a sense apologizes to him for setting this path upon him. That night, Yugi is woken by his other self. Dark Yugi is unsure of what to do. He knows who he is, but what will it mean when he uncovers his memories? Will he lose the new memories he's gained? Yugi assures him that won't be the case. Of course, Yugi can't rest easily, as some random nobody steals the god cards. The anime changes to Rex and Weevil because I guess they couldn't get enough of those two. But Yugi is bailed out by Dark Bakura. Why does he want the Pharaoh's memories to be uncovered? Well, at long last, we're going to find out exactly what Dark Bakura wants out of all this. What Yugi gains out of this is when the door is open, it will open to the afterlife, which gives Yugi an idea of what will happen to his other self. Of course, Dark Bakura has his own reasons and doesn't divulge the full story. Yugi is naturally suspicious, but has no real choice but to accept the Millennium Eye. Yugi has 4 out of 7 items. Come to think of it, they haven't shown the Millennium Scale yet, have they? So after school, the gang heads to the museum where they meet this guy named Bobasa, who somehow has the remaining Millennium items glued to his stomach. Isn't that random and convenient? Yeah, Shadi apparently sent him to keep an eye on Yugi, but even so, this is a huge narrative cop-out. But Takahashi had to rush the final arc due to his declining health and declining sales. So the gang heads inside where Anzu gives Dark Yugi a pendant. A pendant that's going to be very important. Finally, Dark Yugi presents the god cards to the slab, and memories begin to flood back to him, and he is transported out of the Millennium Puzzle. I have to admit, didn't see that coming. Dark Yugi finds himself in ancient Egypt surrounded by people who resemble the people he knows from the present. Reincarnation is the obvious answer here. We get some insight into how they dealt with the Shadow Games and how Duel Monsters was basically born. Since we're on pre-Seto, I should mention that Kaiba has no role in this arc in the manga, but the anime includes him because he was such a major character it would have been odd if he was absent for the final story. At least that's my guess. Bobasa tells the gang that the Pharaoh must relive his death and how he ended up in the puzzle. Oh boy, this is going dark. But there is a way for Yugi's friends to journey there and help out the Pharaoh in his time of need. Back in the memory world, Ishizu tells everyone that dark evil is occurring here when Thief King Bakura shows up. So Dark Bakura is apparently unaware of what's going on here, even though this is his plan, so okay, I can't get lost just yet. Oh wow, they're actually using the scales. It judges a person's soul. And everyone's free to go in except for Bakura because of the Dark Bakura soul. But he's okay with that because his shadow is still in the puzzle. Speaking of which, Bakura wasn't in any of the anime filler arcs. I really don't think the anime team liked him very much. Must be why he's crying in this panel. So Yugi and his friends enter his mind to find Dark Yugi. Through the duel of Thief King Bakura, we learn some interesting tidbits, such as how Duel Monsters was played in ancient Egypt. The Ka, forgive me if I pronounced that wrong, that goes into a person's soul, and that it was the Pharaoh's father who created the Millennium items. Dark Yugi doesn't care so much about Bakura, but he finally remembers his father. An image of him in an absolutely bone-chilling moment tells Thief King Bakura that when he's done laying his father back to rest, he's going to destroy him. The Pharaoh questions why his father made the Millennium items if they all have a taint of evil, but he does remember his father's love for him. When the Pharaoh returns to the battle, he manages to summon Obelisk. Thief King Bakura... Boy, this is getting confusing attacks anyway.
Oh, just wait until Season 5 when there's 3 of me running around. Even the fans have trouble keeping up with that one.
Bakura takes the time to run away, vowing that next time it'll be different, as this will be the end of the Pharaoh dynasty. Back to Yugi and his friends, Bobasa tells them that their role is to find the Pharaoh's true name. Boy, I bet 4 kids really regret saying his name was Yami. Why would his name be King Dark? Do you not think of these things, 4 kids? Dark Bakura is watching, so there's 3 of him running around now. No kidding. I'm having a hard time keeping up already. Back in Memory World, Mahado blames himself for the defilement, but Dark Yugi doesn't blame him. In fact, Mahado is his most trusted servant. Interesting fact. Meanwhile, Priest Seto and Akainen discuss how to fight Bakura. Seto wants to capture commoners and develop their Ka, despite the obvious moral problems of this, and yep, he is Kaiba's past self, alright. A nice quiet moment follows as the Pharaoh looks at the pendant Anzu gave him. 3 days later, the Pharaoh proceeds to humble Seto with Karibo. Well, I hate to say it, but the betrayal arc kinda got cut short, and we'll get into that later. We meet another character, Mahado's apprentice Mana. Gee, I wonder who she's going to become. Mahad confronts Bakura in the tomb, intending to sacrifice himself. Mahado calls forth his spirit. Yep, pretty obvious who that is now. Sure enough, Mahado dies, but his spirit becomes the Dark Magician. Meanwhile, Yugi and the others try to find Dark Yugi. Honda continues his tradition of just being there, while Jinochi doesn't really have much going for him, as his arc was finished in Battle City. But through the power of friendship, they're able to access the memory world because that's just how things are done. Meanwhile, tears are shed for Mahado, and Dark Yugi gives permission for Seto to play his truce, but only to search for Bakura and no one else. Yugi and the others find they cannot speak or be heard by anyone in the memory world. As Priest Seto begins his search, he quickly breaks his promise to not target civilians, and says to capture anyone who opposes them. This is getting kind of eerie, but there are some hints dropped about the White Dragon. Ah, foreshadowing. Here we meet Kasara, who is being prejudiced against because she has pale skin compared to the others. Sadly, racism goes pretty far back. Priest Seto comes to her defense, showing some redeeming qualities, like Kaiba. He senses an incredible amount of Ka in her, but Seto intends to torture civilians to get the Ka that can rival God. Oh boy, this is getting dark. Bakura goes on a spree, knocking out Akiden, but he got the Ka he needed, but Dark Yugi is in pursuit. Bakura begins a game of how many civilians can the Pharaoh save from Diabound. Dark Yugi does his best, but Bakura begins to get the upper hand. This is some really dark stuff. Bakura is basically committing genocide. Dark Yugi is almost done in, but the priests come to his aid just in time. But even with their aid, it's no use. When just then Yugi and his friends are able to reach him because a part of him is still connected to Yugi. Yeah, I guess, but whatever. This allows the Pharaoh to summon Ra. So, well, okay, Bakura is seemingly done for, but Akariden's dark self visits him. Well, this is a bad omen. Dark Yugi greets his friends, while Dark Bakura reflects that the sequence of events has changed. But it's alright, Dark Necrophades is about to make his move. Basically, the Pharaoh is meant to die in this battle, and his soul shattered and put into the Millennium Puzzle, but would be awakened when Yugi solved it 3,000 years later. But we are told the stakes to this fight. If the darkness wins this time, then it will be unleashed onto the modern world. And we learn its name, Zork. Ah, Zork. Remember him from back in chapter 50 or something? Zork rewinds time because, yeah, why not? Dark Bakura confronts Yugi and company. This is getting confusing, referring to three of them. But he reveals exactly why he was doing what he did this whole series. It was all to resurrect Zork. If Zork wins this time, he wins for good, as now the Pharaoh cannot trap him in the Millennium Puzzle. So both Yugis are fighting the Bakura of their time. Dark Bakura reveals that he is a part of Zork. Okay, sure. And morphs his arm into a dual disc. Wow, that's grotesque. Yugi and Jinochi summon dual discs to challenge Dark Bakura, and Honda and Anzu do as well, even though they are not duelists, which just highlights how little Honda has had to do. Jinochi duels first, and well, it doesn't go too well. Meanwhile, the Pharaoh is plunged into a dark abyss as darkness swallows him whole. We get a brief look at the origin of Millennium items, but it feels very quick. Thief King Bakura is assembling the Millennium items. As the Pharaoh's subjects debate what to do next, Seto learns that Kasara is awake. Down in the prison, they try to awaken Kasara's Ka. She doesn't seem to be able to, so Seto steps in to save her, but then the blue-eyes White Dragon emerges. This weird-looking guy tells Seto that they can make the White Dragon his as long as they sacrifice Kasara, but Seto refuses to do so. Meanwhile, the Pharaoh awakens, rescued by a mysterious benefactor, and in due time the Pharaoh survives. Sento contemplates his actions, and upon learning the Pharaoh is alive, he laughs. Was this supposed to set up the betrayal arc? I mean, we all know that didn't happen, so, yeah. Dark Yugi doesn't waste any time. He decides to go to the village Bakura is at for the final battle. For whatever reason, the duel between Jinochi and Dark Bakura was interrupted. Why? I don't know. Yugi has clearly played RPGs as he finds information on where to go next at a bar. The Pharaoh confronts Thief King Bakura, but is too weakened to fight properly. But the Dark Magician appears to aid him and turns the tide single-handedly because that's what the Dark Magician does. Thief Bakura is able to get another Millennium item and is about to destroy the Dark Magician when Mana is able to somehow rescue him. I guess she learned how to do that. She projects herself as the Dark Magician girl. So the battle rages on, and I must admit I'm losing interest as I feel it's wearing as welcome and it really needs to wrap up soon. Dark Magician finally lands the finishing blow, but through the backup plan, because every good villain has one in case their main plan fails, somehow Dark Bakura gets rid of his past self and takes over as the main bad guy. Sure, why not? Then we see the big twist. This whole world is Dark Yugi and Dark Bakura essentially replaying the RPG game they did back in Volumes 6 and 7. Yeah, that kinda came out of nowhere. So they've been playing this game the whole time, even though we saw Dark Yugi get sucked into the world of his memories, but they're still in the museum and... you know what? Screw it. I'm just not going to think about it too much. Dark Bakura summons the evil god Zork to the field. Unfortunately, a lot of the drama is undercut because his second head is basically a giant penis. Now, I know the reason is because Takahashi was high on hospital meds when designing Zork, but even so. The key for Dark Yugi to win is for Yugi and his friends to find his true name. Bobasa changes into a new form. With the Millennium items back in the stone tablet, he can lead Yugi to the Pharaoh's true name. And now the final battle begins. And the word final never sounded so terrifying. The Hasan, who is the true name of Babosa, leads them to the tomb. So let's clarify. We have three Yugis. Dark Yugi, who is playing the RPG. Yugi, who is trying to find his other self's true name. and the nameless Pharaoh, who is a player in the game, and we have 3 Bakuras. Dark Bakura, who is playing opposite Dark Yugi, his shadow soul that he placed in the Millennium Puzzle, and his past thief self. Keeping up so far? But Dark Bakura isn't worried, as his shadow self will stop Yugi and friends from learning the Pharaoh's name. Okay, I really don't know how to refer to these to differ them. What is good is that we see Yugi coming into his own, separate from his other self. Meanwhile, the Pharaoh's father comes to his son's rescue. Yeah, this is kind of the thing we have going now. Bunch of twists and magical rescues. I will admit the pacing is great and fast as we go back and forth between the Pharaoh's battle with Zork and Yugi and friends' quest for the Pharaoh's name. So now the duel between Shadow and Bakura will resume, but Yugi will step up and finish it. Yugi pulls out some new cards, and some of those are cards I use in Master Duel. It's a great showing for Yugi as it proves he's grown into a duelist in his own right without his other self. And though Bakura is able to momentarily get the upper hand, Yugi stands victorious. Dark Bakura tries to destroy the tomb they're in, but Yugi is determined to get the Pharaoh's name regardless, and now the true final battle begins. More family twists abound. The priest corrupted by Bakura is Seto's father. I think I forgot to mention that. But the battle rages, and we get a rather awesome moment where Exodia is summoned. That was pretty great. But even Exodia can't destroy Zork. The Pharaoh's allies have fallen one by one, but the Pharaoh will not give up, while Zork taunts that shadows are born in humans. The Pharaoh stands firm that he will not give up, but it all seems lost when Yugi and his friends arrive to save the day. Summoning their monsters, we see Jinochi did get Red Eyes back. How very nice. Does that mean he won the duel between him and Yugi? But regardless, it's not enough. But Hazen, who is revealed to be Shadi, shields the group from Zork's attack. They must help the Pharaoh see his true name. Anzu gets the idea to use their memories to put the hieroglyphs of the Pharaoh's name on the pendant she gave him. Now that is a good setup, though it's pretty touch and go. The name is engraved on the pendant, and we find at last what the Pharaoh's name is.
Atem.
Atem summons the 3 gods, and he fuses them together into the creator of light, Haleki, which is a card that hasn't gotten a major release outside Japan. They really should release it worldwide. In a blinding flash of light, Zork is vanished. That was pretty awesome. The battle is over, and there's a sad moment where they realize that Atem is no longer Yugi. He has his own name now. From here, we get a very rushed, condensed version of the Seto portrays the Pharaoh arc that's been set up since Battle City, as well as a very rushed origin of the Blue Eyes White Dragon that ends with Kasara saving Seto's soul from his evil father. So, yeah, that happened. I admit, though, that this was Takahashi's biggest regret, that he had to rush this plot point. Atem fades away from the world of memory, leaving Seto as the Pharaoh in his place. Finally, we return to the tabletop game. Bakura is finally free of his dark half, and now only one task remains, the trial of the Pharaoh. The gang meets up with the Istars, and now the Pharaoh's soul must be put to rest. But Marik reveals that before Atem can rest, Yugi must defeat him in a duel. Some quiet moments follow which are appreciated. Eventually they arrive at the stone slab, and the 2 Yugi split into 2, and now the final duel begins. Atem wants to join the afterlife, but he will not go down quietly. The 2 Yugis are able to have a great duel with pretty good combos. Eventually both are down to their last card, and Atem summons Osiris to the field. But the card Yugi put in the golden sarcophagus is Monster Reborn, which is a message from Yugi to Atem that the dead should not stay in this world. Atem accepts that Yugi has surpassed him at last. Yugi's hands shake as he knows what's about to happen, but Atem encourages him to go through with it. Thus the final blow is made, and Atem has lost. Yugi falls to his knees sobbing, but Atem gives his partner one last comfort. Atem tells Yugi he has a strength no one else has, the strength of kindness. No longer the other Yugi, Atem is free, and Yugi is the only Yugi in the world. Atem speaks his name to the eye, and the door to the afterlife opens. He prepares to leave, but his friends call out to him. They don't want him to go, but Jinochi, in an incredible bit of character growth, assures them that he has to. No matter how many years pass, they will always be friends. With one final thumbs up, Atem does not look back as he walks into the light. The slab breaks and the Millennium Islands fall into the chasm. Yugi and friends make it out as the tomb collapses. Thus, in one final moment, we are told the message of this ending. Atem's story has ended in light, but Yugi's story has just begun, and that is the end of Yu-Gi-Oh! For 7 long years, I've traveled with Yu-Gi-Oh! I think I've been able to draw the themes I've wanted to express, but as I end the series, my main concern is whether I've transmitted my message to the readers. From the moment Yugi put together the Millennium Puzzle, the other self appeared in his heart. The time needed to explore 2 main characters turned this into a long series. In our daily life, we never get to see ourselves except by standing in front of a mirror. But even a mirror won't reflect our hearts. The main characters of this work won the courage and strength of will to face each other's hearts. As we go about our lives, we touch people, we see people, and interact with them, and in doing so we feel and think many things. Sometimes we make others happy, sometimes we hurt them, we sympathize, and we disagree. In the midst of this, we learn that people's thoughts and feelings are not a one-way street. You may say that's something very basic and natural, but what I wanted to draw and write in this work was just that interaction between people. In order to do that, I used games. The games that the characters played were not played facing monitors, but facing other people. The opponents they played were the mirrors that reflected their hearts. In a basic sense, they fought each other's spirits. Because this was a manga, it was deeply colored by the battle between good and evil. But I think the basis of the game was to clarify what lies between people. I think this was the reason the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game became so successful all over the world. In my mind, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been completed, but throughout the world many people are taking my work and the cards in their hands. In gratitude for that, I would like to prolong the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! For just a little while longer. I borrow the end of this book to thank all of those who have participated in this world. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Kazuki Takahashi, April 14th, 2004. I think this message carries a different meaning now that Takahashi is gone. But no one's ever really gone, are they? As long as people are playing, reading, or watching Yu-Gi-Oh!, Kazuki Takahashi will live forever. Atem completed his character arc by learning how to lose, and Yugi has stepped into his own man, out of the shadow of his other self. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is definitely a special series to me, as I've made a lot of friends through it, and as an avid gamer, I appreciate the message. We are making connections through the emotions, the feelings we share. If you're watching this video to the end, I can only say thank you. Thank you, Takahashi, for giving the world Yu-Gi-Oh! Takahashi's story may have ended, but you, the one watching this video, your story has just begun, so make it a good one.